It's been nearly 7 years since President Cyril Ramaphosa took office in 2018 with a promise of renewal, reform and stability. When he came in, for millions of South Africans, one of the most pressing issues was the country's crippling energy crisis, best known as loadshedding. At the time, Ramaphosa vowed to resolve the crisis and restore power to the people. Yet here we are in 2025, facing even more frequent blackouts, a system on the brink, and a government that seems to be perpetually scrambling for solutions. Are Eskom's constant struggles and the government's explanations genuinely reflective of this situation, or are we being fed convenient narratives to cover deeper systemic issues? Hello everyone, welcome back to Joe Talks Politics. I am your host, Joseph Musia. Let's get right into this. Load shedding has become a normalized part of South African life, from daily blackouts to hours without electricity, and in some cases, entire days of powerlessness. Back in 2018, South Africa's power utility Eskom was already in dire straits, battered by corruption, poor management, and underinvestment. This crisis had its roots in a long history of mismanagement, dating back years before Ramaphosa took over. In 2018, Ramaphosa came into office on the back of promises to turn things around, to fix Eskom, and by extension, the country's broader energy crisis. The rhetoric was bold. The president called for a reformed Eskom and suggested that the solutions were within our hands.
We've put in place a really good management team at Eskom. And as we have said, the degradation that we've had in Eskom has taken a number of years to get where it is. What we are now dealing with, it's not malfeasance. It is the breakage of machinery, where the power stations are operating and they break down, and that happens because over the years we have not focused on maintenance.
But Ramaphosa and Eskom have been telling us that the system was old long before he became president. In 2025, the reasons for our problems remain the same as in 2008. Eskom continues to struggle with breakdowns, financial instability, and a maintenance backlog that stretches years, and the government's promises have not materialized into a tangible solution. There are lots of power stations around the country that were closed down because they were supposedly no longer viable. With the money we are pumping into servicing the aging and forever unproductive power stations, could we not have built new generation units at the sites of those closed stations? What about the government's role in this ongoing crisis? Are Eskom and the government's explanations truly genuine, or are they merely convenient excuses? Let's explore this more critically. First, we must acknowledge that the Eskom issues didn't suddenly appear when Ramaphosa took over in 2018. The problems have been simmering for years, particularly under Jacob Zuma's presidency, when corruption and political interference hampered Eskom's operations. The damage caused during that time is undeniable, and Ramaphosa inherited a fractured energy utility. But here's the critical issue. Since taking over, Ramaphosa's governments have struggled to enact meaningful reforms. While the president initially promised to fix Eskom, replace corrupt leadership, and address systemic issues, the government's pace of reform has been sluggish at best. We've seen new leadership at Eskom, yet the utility continues to limp from crisis to crisis. Why? The answer seems to lie in more than just aging infrastructure. The Government of National Unity, which includes a broad coalition of interests, has been too divided, to make tough decisions. Ramaphosa himself has been caught between competing factions within his own party, the ANC. Decisions about Eskom have become bogged down in political bargaining, leaving little room for the radical overhaul the utility desperately needs. Further complicating the matter is the ongoing reluctance to introduce significant private sector involvement in Eskom, despite the clear need for financial injection and technical expertise. I am by no means advocating for the privatization of the entity. There is no need for that. We all remember the time when Eskom was a strong company that generated revenues for the state without a need for bailouts. That is how it was inherited from the apartheid government. The problem we are sitting with is that the ANC, which for the past 30 years was the government, based decisions more on ideology and its own fundraising needs than efficiency and competency. We have seen very questionable appointments at the level of management and boards. This facilitated the phenomenon of state capture and the total crippling of this important company. The ongoing energy crisis has significant political implications for President Cyril Ramaphosa and his leadership. When he took over in 2018, the public was hopeful that he would restore the country's institutions to good health. His promise of rebuilding Eskom and addressing the energy crisis became one of his key pledges. However, as the years have passed and the blackouts have worsened, those promises have become harder to believe. For the president, the failure to end rolling blackouts isn't just a technical issue. It's a political issue that cuts to the heart of his credibility. The divisions within the ANC, coupled with Ramaphosa's lack of decisive action on critical issues, have weakened his position. And while he may have started with the moral high ground, especially compared to his predecessor Zuma, the failure to deliver on core promises like ending blackouts tarnishes his legacy. More than just a political liability, the rolling blackouts have strained the public trust in the government. Businesses, especially small enterprises, are suffering from prolonged power cuts, and ordinary citizens are frustrated by the constant disruptions to their lives. The question remains, what next for South Africa's energy future? For President Ramaphosa, the time to act is running out. The rolling blackouts have become a political albatross hanging around his neck. It is no longer enough to offer explanations about the historical problems at Eskom. South Africans are demanding action. For the Government of National Unity, the energy crisis highlights the ongoing challenges of governance in a fragmented, politically charged environment. The government must face the uncomfortable truth. South Africans will not forgive the continued failure to provide reliable energy. Ramaphosa's presidency, and indeed the future of the ANC, rests on his ability to address this crisis. The time for excuses is over. South Africa deserves better, and it's time for the government to deliver, not just promises, but results. What makes matters worse is that Eskom, which is probably the only business in the world that pleads with customers not to use its products, now seeks to punish homeowners and businesses that are using their own initiatives to keep the lights on. It is a fallacy that only the rich are resorting to solar power in the country. Some people, even ordinary working people, have made huge sacrifices to acquire solar panels because power cuts are simply too depressing. People are encouraged to run small businesses because the economy is not creating jobs. Many can't afford to be without electricity for any amount of time in a day. So they have resorted to self-generation. Eskom is coming after them too. This is absolute madness. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share and comment on it. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one.